What is up, Wolfpack Nation? I'm Clayton. Welcome back to Ages of Film. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Justice League, released in 2017, directed by Joss Whedon? Question mark. Yeah, we'll get into that here in a little bit. While you're here, though, do yourself a favor. Hit that like button. Smash the subscribe button. Get in on all the fun and join the Wolfpack Nation. Just a quick reminder before I get into this review, guys, this is just my opinion on this movie. No need to be upset or offended by anything I have to say. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. All I ask that you be respectful. And that being said, let's get rocking. So Justice League 2017, I remember seeing this movie in the theater back in 2017. And originally, I liked it, but I didn't love it. So I can very clearly remember seeing this movie in the theaters with a couple buddies of mine. And I mean, I liked it. Like, if you would have asked me back in 2017 as I'm leaving the theater what my thoughts were on this movie, I would have told you I liked it. You know, it was fine. Over the years, and especially since 2021, when the proper Snyder version of this movie came out, this movie has dwindled further and further down the suck hole, if you will. Not a very good film, but there is still some good to be had. So I'll get into it and into everything that I liked and disliked with this movie, starting, of course, with the positives. So let's talk about it. Positives here for the Whedon cut. And what I mean by this is, look, if you don't know the backstory, obviously Zack Snyder was set to direct this film in its entirety. He directs about 3/4 of it, maybe even a little bit more, before he's essentially shafted from the project because of a death in his family. He went on to mourn, and in his mourning process, the studio basically cut him and hired Joss Whedon to come in and basically finish this film. The last 15-20% of this film, and on top of that, do massive cuts out of this film, reshoots, cuts, and basically make this a completely different version of the film than what Snyder had originally intended to make. So that's why in the opening I said directed by Joss Whedon ? Because by the technical standards of Hollywood and filmmaking, Whedon didn't direct enough of this film to be credited as director. Which is why on any site you go to, whether it's Letterboxd, IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, the film itself, if you own the film, everything, it's going to say directed by Zack Snyder, because he directed the majority of this film, even though this is much more along the lines of Whedon's vision or version of the film than it is Snyder's version. And that's very clear just by watching the two versions of this movie, the Whedon version and the Snyder version. Vastly different films and versions of this movie. So yeah, I personally consider this the Whedon cut or the Whedon version of the movie, and then the Snyder version is the proper one that was released straight to HBO Max in 2021. So, but there are still some good things with the Whedon cut. One of them is the cinematography. I do still like the cinematography in this film, primarily because it's still mainly Snyder's cinematography being used here. There is some stuff that was some reshoots that were done by Whedon, but by and large, it's still mainly the Snyder type of cinematography. in this film. And I like that. I do. I enjoyed that. I think, sorry, I have something in my tooth. I can't. Weird. Yeah, the cinematography is still very good. I really like Snyder's eye for visual flair and camera framing and filters and stuff like that. It still looks pretty good visually. So I do enjoy the cinematography in this movie, although I think it's even better in the Snyder cut because it's Snyder's full vision, right? But the cinematography here still good, still a positive that stands out in a positive way for me in this movie. Also, the visual effects, for the most part, there are some very glaring issues with the visual effects in this film that I will address when I get to the negatives, but basically all the visual effects that were done by Snyder look pretty darn good, it must be said. So, which is the majority of this film. So yeah, the visual effects for the most part are a positive for me. I thought the action scenes were still pretty good. I thought they were still pretty well shot. Pretty, fluid, entertaining, pretty fun still. I don't know, like that's subjective, but yeah, I mean, I still kind of like the fight scenes, the action scenes, it still kept me entertained, still kept me engaged. So I would give that a positive. I thought it still had a coherent plot running through the film. The Justice League members have to come together to take on a villain, and that wants to essentially wipe out the world, wipe out the planet. Steppenwolf is known as the world ender in this film. So there is still a coherent plot that you can follow through the film that makes sense. Although there's still some questions to be had there. But yeah, I mean, it's still a story, a plot points throughout the film that still makes sense for the most part. The characters, here's the thing. Even though the versions of the characters that we get in this cut, in this version, are much weaker and much more shallow than the version that we get in the Snyder cut of this film, they're still characters that I like. Okay, I'm a DC fan. I make no apologies about that. I love DC. I love the characters of DC. So these are still characters that I like. And because of that, I'm still engaged with them. I'm still invested with them for the most part, especially because most of them are carryovers from either Man of Steel or Batman vs Superman. While we do get a couple new characters introduced here, they're still characters that I like. Okay, so yeah, and they still look pretty good. Batman, played by Ben Affleck. I love his portrayal of Batman. He's maybe my favorite version of Batman on the big screen. Not my favorite version of Bruce Wayne. That still goes to Christian Bale. But my favorite on-screen version of Batman, I would probably give it to Affleck. So I like his version of the character. I do like Wonder Woman again in this film. I enjoy some of the stuff we got with Cyborg, Superman, played by Henry Cavill, coming back. The small part that he does get to play here, I do think he does good in it. So yeah, the characters for me are still a positive. They are still characters that I like. And characters, I've said it a million times on my channel, are the most important part to any film because they're the ones telling the story. So if I don't invest with the characters, you're going to have a darn time trying to get me to invest with your story. Not saying it's impossible. I can think of a few exceptions where there weren't really any characters that I cared for in a film, but the story or the experience was still so impactful that it kept me invested. But those are few and far between. For the most part, I need characters to invest in if I'm going to invest in the story. And I do like these characters. So that is a positive for me. And then I do think there were a couple of scenes that still carried an emotional kind of weight to them. Basically because they were scenes that were shot by Snyder and they were just kind of edited in to this cut by Whedon. They weren't Whedon's shots. They weren't his scenes. They were Snyder scenes that were carried over and edited into this film. But there are a few scenes here, like when Martha Kent sees Clark for the first time since he's been resurrected. She pulls up to the farmhouse and he's standing out there with Lois, and we see her reaction to seeing Clark alive. Like, that has some emotional weight to it, and especially if you've invested in Superman, if you've invested in this version of Clark and Superman and in his relationship with his mother, that scene still holds some weight, especially if, you know, you can put yourself in her shoes as a parent, or, you know, even as someone that, if you've lost a loved one, imagine seeing them alive again, you know? And so there are a couple scenes I would say that still hold some emotional weight to them for me, and that's a positive. So yeah, and I do still kind of find it entertaining. I don't know, you know, just call me a DC fanboy, whatever. I do find it entertaining. So moving on to the negatives, and trust me, I got some bones to pick with this movie. I got a lot of bones to pick with this movie. One of the biggest issues I have with this version of the film is the editing. It must be said, the editing here is bad. It's really bad, people. Yeah, trying to bring Joss Whedon in to a project that was being essentially created by Zack Snyder, not a very good blending of directorial styles and storytelling styles. You have Whedon, who was known from the MCU directing the first two Avengers movies, which is, you know, has had a much more lighter tone, and it fit those movies. It fit the first two Avengers movies really good. That's not the same kind of tone or style that the DCEU was going for. And that stands out, man. Like, his style does not blend very well with Snyder's style. And the editing here, it just, they essentially take what's a 4-hour runtime in the Snyder cut and they edit it down to under 2 hours. And it's bad. It's choppy editing. There are things that, from an editing standpoint, that are just not done very well. You know, like you have in the opening scene when Batman is fighting these parademons, he's literally talking to Alfred with a criminal in the background that he just beat up. Like, there's no secretness to his identity. And then later on, when he's Bruce Wayne and he's going to visit Aquaman, Arthur Curry, they're like walking along the beach, and Arthur Curry is literally saying his name, Batman, in public. Like, there are people around both of them, and he's just casually saying Batman, that, you know, that Bruce is Batman in front of everybody. And it's like, did we completely forget that Batman's identity is supposed to be a secret here? Like, does Bruce Wayne just not care anymore if people find out that he's Batman? Because he's not giving a crap in this scene. Like, and it's just weird. It's like, why are we doing this? I don't, I don't get it. You know, and then you have like the Wonder Woman scene, the first scene with Wonder Woman when she comes in to save the civilians from the terrorist bombers in the building. A scene that is actually done really well in the Snyder cut. Here it's edited down, and it's really bad because it essentially, the scene ends with Wonder Woman basically just telling the armed robber and terrorist guy that she's a believer, but that's it. Like, these are guys that are essentially going to not only blow up the building, but have a bomb in a briefcase that is enough to essentially blow up 3 blocks worth of the city. And that plot never gets resolved. It never gets resolved. We cut to a completely different setting, into a wide cut, and we never go back there to resolve that plot. So it's like, does the bomb go off? Do these people die? Are we just left to assume that Wonder Woman saved them somehow? Like, that, if you don't have the Snyder cut to have the answer to that question, and you're just watching this version, you're like, what exactly happened there? All we know is that Wonder Woman showed up, but that scene is essentially a wasted scene in the Whedon cut, because it does nothing for the plot, it does nothing for the story, and it does nothing for the characters. Every scene in any movie should serve one of those 3 things: plot, story, or character. Plot, story, or character. If the scene in a movie is not doing one of those 3 things, it's a wasted scene. Take it out, cut it out. You don't need it. And that scene in the Whedon cut is a wasted scene, because it does nothing for the plot, it does nothing for the story, and it does nothing for any of the characters. And it leaves a plot that is left unresolved. That's bad editing. That is bad editing, people. Yeah, and it's just, there's a number of things like that where it scenes that aren't doing anything for any of those 3 things: plot, story, or character. There's a scene where Bruce is talking to Alfred. I think it's like in a bunker. Maybe it's in Wayne Towers. I don't know. It's essentially just a scene set up for a comedic relief, where Alfred is making these stupid jokes with Bruce, and they're kind of joking with each other. Again, not doing anything for plot, story, or character. The jokes that they try to put in aren't funny. They don't work. It's MCU Avengers type of humor that, again, works in the MCU. Doesn't work in the DCEU. It doesn't work. It's at the expense of these characters, and it creates a much lighter tone than this story needs. And that's a problem. That's, again, bad editing. There's a number of scenes here that are there just for the sake of humor, just for the sake of a laugh, but the humor just does not work. It just does not work. Bad editing all throughout this movie. That's a big negative for me in this version of the film. Also, really weak character development in this movie. I kind of touched on it earlier. Most of the characters here are very shallow. All right, the only character that really even gets an arc in this film is Wonder Woman. She actually gets an arc. She actually does change in her character throughout this film. Everyone else, pretty shallow. Bruce doesn't really change. All he's going for is he basically just wants to right a wrong. That's all he's really going for here. He feels bad that Superman died. He feels guilty for that, and he's trying to right a wrong throughout this film. But there's not really a character change in Bruce that there is in the Snyder version of this movie. Bruce Wayne actually has a character arc, and I'll address that when I review the Snyder cut of this movie. But Bruce is pretty shallow in this movie. Arthur Curry, Aquaman, what purpose does he really even serve in this movie? Like, what is he really even doing? Other than just showing up to be an extra hand to fight the bad guy. And again, has a few scenes where they're trying to make him a comedic character in certain scenes, and the humor again just doesn't work. It doesn't fit the tone or the character, and it's at the character's expense. Bad stuff, man. Really shallow character. The Flash, after the Flash sends the shockwave to the mother box that revives Superman, the Flash is basically done at that point. Like, he really doesn't serve any other point the rest of the film. Even in the third act, in the main fight, the final fight, he's doing nothing other than just pushing a couple people out of the way, pushing a couple buses out of the way. And even then, he needs Superman to come help him out because he's not fast enough to move these people, even though his name is literally the Flash. The Flash. He's still not fast enough to save a couple people in a matter of a few seconds, even though he was literally moving faster than the speed of sound and the speed of light earlier in the film. Here, he's not fast enough to just push everyone out of the way. I don't make the rules. All right, that's what happened. Yeah, very shallow character in this movie. Cyborg, again, really shallow. They don't really do much or give much depth to that character other than he was in this tragic accident. He blames his dad. Wonder Woman kind of motivates him a little bit. He joins the team, and that's it. He doesn't really have it. They don't really settle any plot with him and his dad in this movie at all. That's another plot point that's left unresolved, really, in this film. They don't really give him much depth or arc either. The characters here are just really shallow, man, and there's not much character development or character work, and not nearly as much as I would have liked there to have been. A lot of humor scenes that, again, just break the tension. They're scenes that should be serious scenes that should be taken seriously, and they will throw these MCU type of humor dialogue into the scenes that kind of cuts the tension and breaks that tension up, or that tone. It breaks that tone up, and just, again, doesn't work. The styles, the directing styles of Whedon and Snyder just don't mesh well together. And then you have just kind of this kid-friendly type of atmosphere in this movie. You know, the opening shot is these couple kids interviewing Superman. Like, why this is establishing the tone for the film. Kids interviewing Superman. Why? Because we want to make this a kid-friendly movie. No, thank you. No, thank you. This does not need to be a kid-friendly movie necessarily. Know your characters and know the type of tone that your story needs. And the tone that Whedon was going for here does not match or fit the story or characters that are being used and told here. And then some of the visual effects, all the effects works basically by Whedon are trash. They try to remove Henry Cavill's mustache with bad CGI. The visual effects on Steppenwolf don't look very good, in my opinion. Basically, all the visual effects that are used and done by Joss Whedon do not look good in this movie, in my opinion. So while some of the visual effects look really good and hold up well, the stuff by Snyder, all the stuff by Whedon looks really bad, just doesn't blend very well. And then finally, the threat here by Steppenwolf, who I think is a much weaker antagonist than the main villain, the ultimate main villain in the Snyder Cut, which is Darkseid. Here we're told that they basically tried to take the story that is used for Darkseid in the Snyder Cut, and they try to apply that to Steppenwolf in this movie. But it doesn't make much sense, because we're told that all the old gods tried to stop Steppenwolf centuries ago. And it took essentially the entire army of old gods and lanterns and the whole galaxy to stop Steppenwolf. But then you're telling me that a group of 6 dudes is enough to put Steppenwolf down? Shoot, Aquaman and Wonder Woman by themselves were holding their own against Steppenwolf. So why should I then believe that it took the entire galaxy of old gods and lanterns and everybody else and their mother to chime in to try to beat Steppenwolf in the past? It makes no sense there. I just don't buy that Steppenwolf is the big bad in this story, especially since that we do have one quick reference of Darkseid in a scene where Steppenwolf says that his ultimate goal here is to take his rightful place among the new gods. But in that same scene, he references that he's ultimately doing this for Darkseid. So it's like, which is it? Are you doing this to take your place among the new gods, or are you doing this to please Darkseid? Because if you're doing this for Darkseid, there's absolutely no way, brother, that you're going to take your place among the new gods, because Darkseid, homeboy, not going to allow that. But if you're doing this to take your place among the new gods and not for Darkseid, then why would you be referencing Darkseid in the first place? I don't know. It's messy. It's messy from a character writing standpoint with Steppenwolf. I just don't buy that he was the big bad in this movie. Just a lot of messy stuff there as well. So overall, yeah, it's a film that I don't necessarily think is the utter garbage that some people make it out to be. I do still find some entertainment value here, and I do still think there's some quality here, but it's also incredibly flawed as well. So my overall rating here for the Whedon version of Justice League, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5, although, and this is just between you and me, I low key, and I mean like the lowest key, kind of want to give it a 3. But I will leave it at that. That's just between you and me, and what's said in the pack stays in the pack, Kimosabi. All right? Capiche? Capiche. Okay, so 2.5 out of 5. That's my rating for official rating for Justice League. So I will review the Snyder cut of this. And so yeah, stay tuned for that one. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. We got another Superman review coming up. Once the new Superman movie drops, I'll review that one. And we'll do a Superman ranking video after that. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. And until next time, you freaks, kick it and rock on.